Ladies and gentlemen, President Trump's UFC event at the White House could have been the site of a mass casualty terror attack. I'm Rich Lowry of National Review, and this was a relatively sophisticated, totally bonkers terror plot driven by anti-Semitism and anti-capitalist sentiment. In part because of that, it hasn't gotten a lot of play in the mainstream media, or not as much play as it would have otherwise. And as a sign, we are now beginning to live through an era of ideologically driven left-wing terror of the sort we experienced in the 1970s. Now, we all know about the UFC event, a lot of patriotic imagery associated with it last weekend, typical Trump showmanship and when to stage this event on the White House lawn. And of course, the left hated it and thought it shouldn't happen. It was fascistic and all the rest of it. Now, the idea of these plotters was that they would take explosive-laden drones, fly them over the event, blow them up, cause panic and evacuation. Then at one of the evacuation points, they'd have pre-situated snipers ready to shoot people coming out, and they're hoping to get high-value targets. They mentioned Trump and Vance in their plotting. They mentioned Bibi Netanyahu. Netanyahu obviously wasn't there. They weren't going to get at Trump or Vance, but they could plausibly have killed a lot of people. And on their target list were Republican senators and other such people. Now, these plotters and their conversations together, again, it feels so much like the 1970s domestic terror cells. They're talking about robbing to get more munitions. In their case, they were targeting a certain ammunition plant. They're talking about establishing safe houses when they went on the run after carrying out this attack. And they're talking about breaking people out of jail if they're arrested over this plotting. Now, fortunately, it is much harder to pull this kind of thing off these days because there are fewer ungoverned spaces in America, if you will. There's surveillance cameras everywhere. There are mobile phones. People can be tracked. So it's much harder to have the equivalent of the Sudanese Liberation Army or the Weather Underground or the Black Panthers from the 1970s who ran riot for a significant period of time. Instead, thank God, these guys were rolled up quite quickly and, in fact, preemptively. So what was motivating the plotters? Anti-capitalism and anti-Semitism. These two very often go together. The suspect told investigators the goal of the attack was to target, quote, capitalist elites, billionaires, and politicians who received money from the American Israeli Public Affairs Committee, or AIPAC. AIPAC, of course, almost always an obsession of anti-Semites. There's more in the criminal complaint against a 19-year-old from Ohio named Tyson Proper. His phone revealed a chat where he said on May 13th, "I got a possible target, Marsha Blackburn, is senator for Tennessee." And in response to a question in the chat asking why to attack her, she's taken money from the Israel pro-Israel lobby and supports them on May 31st. Proper sent messages leading with the text, "These are people we're going to focus on," and then sent images of Senator Jim Justice, Senator Shelley Moore Capito, Congresswoman Carol Miller, and Representative Riley Moore. The four images of these members of Congress appear to have been taken from the website trackapac.com, an anti-APAC site. It appears to include information about how much money each congressperson received, quote, from pro-Israel PACs. We've heard a lot about shadowy forces controlling U.S. politics for nefarious reasons. They're either Israeli or Jewish, and these guys apparently took that rhetoric very seriously and determined to try to act on it. This plot also shows the dangers related to this point of conspiratorial thinking. This is from a news report about Proper. His mother told police her son opposed the ecological harm caused by data centers, disagreed with the handling of the Epstein files, and believed the government worshipped Satan. Here's more from a Fox News report. Authorities said Proper kept a journal outlining his belief that a larger group worships a demonic figure and engages in the ritual sacrifice of children. Now, that's QAnon-style paranoia, which the media used to believe was a very bad thing, but now has been laundered and achieved a kind of respectability in the obsession with the so-called Epstein class. We see this on the far right, and we see it from opportunistic Democrats who have picked it up because they think it's harmful to Donald Trump. So you get Thomas Massie on the one hand and Ro Khanna on the other, and these plotters taking it to another level and taking it much more seriously and wanting to actually act on it in a violent manner. Now, again, these guys are caught days before the event, but that doesn't mean there wasn't serious planning. They're talking about tiers within the cell. Tier one would engage in the attacks. Another tier would just help with logistics. They engaged in weapons training and they amassed a lot of firepower. Again, let's go to the complaint against Proper. When the FBI executed a search warrant at his residence, they found a large quantity of boxes of spent ammunition, rounds of spent cartridge casings, consistent with ammunition having been fired, and other tactical clothing. Then it goes on to say that Proper told investigators that the conspirators were going to meet up in Fredericksburg, Virginia. He was planning to, quote, drive, taking his weapons and body armor, including an AR-15, all his ammunition, tactical vests, and ballistic plates. He planned to take extra body armor for other members of the group. The DOJ has documented the arsenals of the 5 guys who've been arrested. Here's Proper's gun. Here's tactical equipment of a guy named Eskridge and more from Eskridge. And this makes the whole thing really too on the nose. This guy, one of the ringleaders, is an illegal immigrant from Mexico. He comes in on a B-2 visa, overstays it when he's supposed to leave at the end of 2001. Then, amazingly enough, is a DACA recipient under Barack Obama in 2014. Now, the cell we've just been talking about, we've been seeing activity by similar style groups here recently in the United States. My colleague Noah Rothman has literally written a book about this. It's called Blood and Progress. In Los Angeles, there was a planned New Year's Eve attack. The group was testing their bombs when it was broken up by the FBI. And they said what they wanted to do was free the world from American imperialism, which is the only way to a safe and peaceful future. You also had this extraordinary attack by a cell in Texas last year, shot up an ICE facility, shot an ICE officer in the neck. Literature that the ICE attackers left said we need to fight ICE terror with class war, free all political prisoners, and resist fascism, fight oligarchy. So this kind of extremism is afoot in the land. It's very dangerous. It's probably going to get worse. There are people who are determined to create the 1970s again here in the United States of America, and it's a very frightening and disturbing prospect. By the way, comment, like, subscribe. I guarantee you won't regret it. I'm Rich Lowry. Over and out.